Good afternoon, long time no see. Or remember, I was the only one to say in India, aloha. Really great to be with all of you this evening. And of course, what makes it even more special is to have this opportunity to have my mentor and boss and my friend, Mr. Ratan Tata, grace us this afternoon. So I know that we have a limited period of time, but I thought that we would make it just, I have to be clear here. As they say in America, we got history, we got history, 12 years of history here. So, you can excuse part of those things there. So I thought we'd just take you through a helicopter view and look at 4 views here with Mr. Tata. One would be the Tata Group, one would be India, one would be globalization, global. And of course, we're here, it's the hotels, hospitality, travel and tourism summit here. So Tata, if I can start with talking about the Tata Group, it's a question that I was very interested in asking you is that the Tata Group is such a diverse company. It has, in range of industries from energy, cars, steel, technology, retail, food and beverage, hospitality, aviation. I mean, the question is, which is your favorite? I mean, over the course of your career here, there's so many areas that you've engaged in and grew. And what industry for you is something that at this stage you look back and you say, I enjoyed this segment of our company, and why would that be? And which of those do you see from all the businesses in today's world going forward has the most potential?
It's been 4 or 5 years since I've been actively engaged, so context-wise, it's a little difficult to answer. When I was chairman of the group, I think there was a disproportionate amount of time that I expended in the automobile business because it was, at that time, the most exciting thing we were doing in terms of trying to indigenize the product that we would use for transport. I've also been a pilot all my life, and I've had a great deal of interest in aviation. I still do. So it varies. I think there comes a time when a particular industry is interesting, exciting, and then there's a time when that, I hate to say it, but gets boring. And so you move to another area which is exciting, or a new area that is coming up. So it's a moving target, actually.
So if you looked at that today, though, which would you say, for looking at it from your experience close up and from a distance, and looking at it at a global context and domestic context, which industries do you see have the highest growth today or going forward?
Well, I think what's most recent in my mind is what we've spent the last few minutes looking at. You've got a country of 1.2 billion, 1.3 billion people, a lot of natural attributes, beaches, mountains, warm weather, and you ask yourself, are we doing the most that we can in tourism? And I think what's been confirmed in the last few minutes is, no, we're not. So one exciting industry ought to be tourism. And yet, for one reason or another, we are losing that option to our neighbors, to others in the region. And my view would be that tourism, not because we're dealing with it today, but on a continuing basis, could become one of the largest and most exciting industries that the country has seen.
Well, you know, it's great because we're going to segue into that because, as you know, travel and tourism, the WTTC started today. The World Travel Tourism Council is in Spain today with the President of Spain and President Obama addressing the crowd there. But I think as of today, we are still the largest employer in the world, travel and tourism, and we're 10% of global GDP. So it's still extremely important, and although we've made great strides from the 12 years that I was here, and see incredible strides, there still is a gap between what's going on around the world and where we are. There's a gap of what we need to catch up, and I think we can all focus on that area. But I guess just sticking with the group and business, it's more philosophical in that respect. But when you look at the business and of the and this is more for a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience, how do you, after all these years, measure success when you look at a business? Is it the share price? Is it the net income? Is it something else? I mean, it's a kind of a loaded question in that respect. But in what respect do you look at? I mean, obviously you have to look at everything consolidated to a certain extent, but also at the dig down into the different businesses. But how do you measure success when you looked at what you invested in and how the company was doing?
Well, I think one thing that over the past several decades that have wrongly been looked at has been to look at industry against its own past history.
Right.
What you need to do is to stress yourself and compare yourself to the world's best or where you want to be yourself. So it varies at different times. It's growth at some times, it's bottom line at other times, it's quality of service, it's the many metrics that you can encounter and that you should keep actively seeking to excel at every stage. So there's no single answer.
And so in that respect, you know, your ethos, your brand of what the company represents, what you mean to that, and et cetera. When we look at partnering with someone, the Tata Group, and in that respect, and you look at another business or another business person, what factors would you say would be a deal breaker for you when you're looking at businesses? I mean, you're still extremely active around the world as well. So what's important for you when you've been looking at that, obviously?
I think it comes back to a view of excitement on the industry itself, whether you consider that you can make a business successful if it's in trouble. And the key issue is when you give up. I think Tatas would be accused of hanging on too long to certain businesses which the industry or the media or our critics would consider to be gone companies that are half dead or otherwise. We've managed to turn them around, maybe too late, or sometimes enjoyably fast. But deep down inside, it's very difficult to give up an enterprise, the people, the excitement that you think you can do so. While many may disagree with my view, you have an urge to make something successful rather than give up.
Well, you know, I mean, both myself and now my colleague Puneet has had the privilege of essentially being the custodian and guiding the oldest company of the Tata Group today. So we understand how important these decisions are. It's a, you know, telco was something that you started early in your career or that you had been put into, etc. So, but the other thing is that, so of the people that you've had around you, the managers, and what qualities do you admire most in people? And the other side of that is what makes you intolerant of those same people. So what qualities do you admire when you were looking at someone to run one of your companies?
Well, I think you really admire something near term when you're dealing with someone, but I'd say you don't really know that person until you worked with that person for a period of time.
Right.
And you can be so wrong, and or you can be someone that has seen the spark of the person, but it takes a long time for you to really know the person you're working with.
You heard that one, everybody, right? Okay. And so, I'm sure you've been asked this before, but looking at your career, who's had the greatest influence on your life, or looking at who has been the greatest influence for you?
That's an easy one to answer. My mentor, and I was very fortunate to have him as a mentor, was J.R.D. Tata. I learned a lot from him. I was terrified when I took over because he decided to stay in the building, and I had visions of checking in the morning with him every day, and his running the business as he had done for 50 years. I was very wrong because he was a terrific senior citizen. He was there when you needed him. He was busy with other things, and he always had time for you. So for me, I would say without a moment's hesitation that Jay was a very special person that held my hand through the first few years of my career as chairman.
And I mean, I think one of the things that obviously that you're focusing on now, outside of the business aspect, is the philanthropy aspect of the family, of the trust that was set up. And I guess the question for me, because I think you and I had a conversation before of how the company was so big that there were so many diversified things that we were all doing to give back to the communities that we serve, and that we were going to try and focus so that we could have a bigger impact on different things. So what comes to mind for me is the philosophy today, or of the trust or the foundation of the future's key areas that make a difference in people's lives, or why. So I say, like, environment. I think one thing we talked about is potable water for years that you were extremely concerned about, and women. Well, today, what would you say is the focus of that philanthropy? or your philosophy for that?
As you yourself said, if you try to paraphrase what you're trying to do, you're trying to enhance the quality of life of the people that you serve. Our sole income in our philanthropic company, trusts, basically come from dividends from our operating companies. And about 66% of the dividend flow, or from the profits, the dividends that get announced, are what we disperse, which is about $100 million each year. We have transformed from a trust that just deals with personal hardship to a trust that deals with bigger issues like you talked of safe drinking water, nutrition, energy, and more recently, cancer treatment. And day after tomorrow, it may be something else that we consider to be important. And you measure, it's very easy, in fact, to measure what you are able to do. The sad part is that very often you're doing things that still don't reach the people. In other words, you may be supporting cancer treatment and making good progress in that area, but you're missing providing this treatment to the millions of people who can't afford it. So there are many shortfalls in this, and one has to keep trying it. One has to be humbled enough to realize that you may not be able to do enough.
So that kind of, for me, segues into the next area, which I've given you the four things, is about India and the country. And one of the things is that what I learned here is that, you know, if you look back 250 years ago, I call it the resurgence of the East. And I lived in Shanghai in 1987, 1988. And if you remember of that time, the East India Company 250 years ago, the Bombay, Shanghai essentially drove most of the economies of the world, a major part of the economy of the world. And so India, China, China, India, it's something that we always spoke about. But for me, the train has left the station. I mean, it's there. What's your view of the state of the Indian economy today? I mean, do you think the country's headed in the right direction? Are we in areas that we can, I mean, we can always do better in certain things, but are you positive on where we're going now with, I mean, we're still we're outpacing China with our GDP growth, and obviously they're having a hard spell at the moment, but where do you see the state of the Indian economy? It's a broad question.
Well, I think there's always a view you can take which is critical or harsh, if you might. And in the past few weeks, it's become harsher because attacks are back and forth, almost like a tennis match. I would say that at the present moment, India has been on the cusp of being promised a new India with a certain amount of forward-looking policies. Not all of those policies have been implemented. Whether we have given adequate time and occasion to have that happen, but my own view would be that we need to unite ourselves to deal with the new India which is being promised. and put all our backing into that as we go forward.
So then would I mean, over the course of the years, you must have had many people come to you. Did you ever really think of pulling a Michael Bloomberg? Were you ever interested in politics? You know, did think about what you could do as a for the country in that respect, as opposed to running a business?
I'm trying to get a word in to say that the worst thing that could happen to me is to me to make a mistake that I can enter politics. I have no interest in doing so, and I would not be successful. I think I can be of greater value outside the political circles than within it.
It was always a question I wanted to ask you, but somebody gave me the question. I thought, okay, it's a good idea to ask you that question. And so, from the global perspective, right? Do you, outside of the Tata Group, what company do you admire most and why? If you look at all the different ones that you've worked with and met and did things there, what outside of this, what company do you look at today? And do you admire most and why?
That has changed over time. For many years, a relatively small company we started making loudspeakers for hi-fi equipment, a company called Bose Systems, was one that was owned by a personal friend and was a much admired company. Today, I think that would be replaced by companies like Apple, which I greatly admire. And I think that, again, is a moving target as it stands. Google is another company. I think innovative companies that are brave enough to go into new areas and do it well are those that one tends to respect.
So I'm respectful of, in that sense, of our getting to our time. So we're here for Hospitality, Hotel, Travel, and Tourism Conference. I thought I would just segue into the last part of it about travel and tourism. So we had said right before this, 1 in every 10 jobs around the world, travel and tourism. Largest employer, 10% of total employment, 10.4% of global GDP, $9 trillion business, 319 million jobs. And we're in an audience of my peers of hoteliers here, both domestic and global. And today the WTTC starts today, and in the Power Tourism ranking, India is number 3 in that ranking today. So now we're gonna get into some of these things. So the view of tourism in India, you gave us an idea. Now I'm gonna ask you as a guest, right? Remember Puneet, he's an architect, so whenever you build a Taj Hotel and he stays at the hotel, he's going to give you a little list of what didn't work or what button came off or all that. But as a guest, your pet peeves as a guest, is it the product? Is it the sleep that you enjoyed the most? The bathroom? Is it technology in the room? We kind of spoke about some of these hotels being done today. Is it the service or design? What is a pet peeve for you about staying in hotels? Because, my God.
I think very simply, it's a couple of things. It's first the comfort and cleanliness of the surroundings, but more than anything else, it's the quality of service and the attention to detail without it being obtrusive. I think you put that together and you have principally what makes you come back to the same same facility.
So it's not that you use the amenities that they give you in the bathroom, the shampoo. Do you use them, or do you bring your own, or do you so you're getting the inside scoop here. Do you use the bathroom amenities when you stay in a hotel?
Yes, I do, and embarrassingly, I always steal everything I can find. I don't mean the telephone and other things, but
Well, those are normally today screwed to the table anyway.
That's right.
So, so that's interesting, and you know, we had various discussions about design and architecture, and in regards to that, you being a judge on the Pritzker Prize and having seen so many of that type, and I had worked in an IMP hotel in Australia, tallest building in the country. So, you know, the design and architecture today for us hoteliers, you know, you have obviously Frank Lloyd Wright did a number of things, the Imperial Hotel in Japan. You have Mr. Pei, who has at least 4 or 5 hotels, Singapore, Melbourne, New York, the Four Seasons. Zaha Hadid has her hotels. Frank Gehry, you know, scrumple up the paper and that's a hotel. And of course, Mr. Portman, Jack Portman, was a very big architect in that. What do you look at? Because you look at it from a different perspective, coming from of an architect, and so understanding that design. But what do you look at with the sense of place of the hotel, and in the architecture where it overwhelms the people that stay in the building, and where it's designed for the architect and not for the people that live in it. How do you, as an architect who has been staying in hotels and all of these, how do you see that in just your view of that?
Well, I think the architect is always looking at as an architectural image of something that works in terms of circulation, that has a visual surprise to it and is not boring.
Right.
And we look down on something that's over elaborate and very fussy, which many people may feel otherwise. So cleanliness of design,
Right.
and function are all things that build into one. Different things to different people.
Right.
And I think architects would be more given to looking at something that's oversimplistic and more minimalistic in appearance than perhaps you would.
And how are we doing technology-wise from your perspective as a guest when staying in hotels or in hotels? Is anybody doing it right?
I think more and more hotels in India are doing better and better in terms of understanding what is required, and that's really terrific to see.
Okay, this is well, we're going to the trick last question for Mr. Tata. So, what's your favorite hotel in the world today? Your business hotel and then your leisure hotel. So we're not talking about what's your favorite hotel? That's kind of a loaded question, but
He asked me that question in the car coming over, and I said, what would happen if my favorite hotel were not a Taj hotel? We never got beyond that, and I think I want to retain my friendship with you and not necessarily disclose what my favorite hotel is.
well, I was looking for Vikram Oberoi, you know. Okay, and so one of the last questions is, not counting the Taj Palace, Bombay, right? What's your favorite Taj hotel?
Asking the same question, two different forms. My answer is the same.
You see, you can't out-trick a master here. So, last question for everyone. You have a lot of young entrepreneurs here in the building. I guess for business as well as hospitality, any advice you have, kind of, pearls of wisdom by Ratan Tata, of advice about the young entrepreneurs in the audience today? Leave them something to think about. Something.
I keep getting that question repeatedly, and I'd say to a young person that's starting his life, maybe there are a couple of things that they need to do. One is to want to make a difference in whatever they've done. And the second is to be driven or motivated to do the right thing, not the easiest thing or the most popular thing, but what is the right thing, so that they can go home at night and say they did the right thing and they made a difference.
So, Manav, we go into our next session, and it's supposed to be Everybody Loves Raymond, but actually for me, it's Everybody Loves Ratan. Honor of my 12 years. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ratan.
Thank you, Mr. Tata.